What if I told you that one of the world's most admired cities, a place praised for its order, beauty, and safety, is also home to stories few dare to tell? Behind the polished glass buildings and immaculate gardens of Singapore lies a reality rarely spoken of, a reality where silence is golden, obedience is expected, and perfection comes with a cost. Because what the glossy travel ads won't show you is the other side. Singapore is often described as a miracle, a tiny island nation with no natural resources, transforming itself into one of the richest, safest, and cleanest countries in the world in just a few decades. But here's the question: what was sacrificed to create this miracle, and more importantly, who paid the price? Today, we're pulling back the curtain. We're going deeper than surface-level praise, beyond the awards and skyscrapers, into the mechanisms that keep this city running, and the stories that get left behind. This is the dark side of Singapore, what they don't tell you. Let's begin. First, let's talk about law and order. In Singapore, everything is regulated, everything. In Singapore, everything is regulated, everything. The streets are clean not because people love cleanliness, but because breaking the rules comes with heavy punishment. Drop a cigarette butt on the ground? That's up to $1,000 in fines. Forget to flush a public toilet? Yes, there's a fine for that too. Graffiti isn't just frowned upon, it's considered vandalism and can lead to caning. That's right. A punishment where the offender is literally whipped with a thick rattan cane. In 1994, the world was shocked when a 19-year-old American named Michael Fay was sentenced to caning for vandalism. Despite international outcry, including appeals from the US president, the sentence was carried out. And it wasn't just a one-off. Singapore's legal system prides itself on being tough, consistent, and above all, uncompromising. The result? A society that is safe and orderly, but also one where many people live with an underlying fear of making a mistake. It raises a tough question. How much personal freedom are you willing to trade for public perfection? Now let's move into the world of those who keep Singapore running but rarely get credit. I'm talking about migrant workers. These workers come mostly from Bangladesh, India, China, and the Philippines, but you'll rarely see them in the tourist zones. They live on the margins, physically and socially. Walk through Marina Bay Sands, look at the skyline, take the MRT. Everything you see has been built, cleaned, and maintained by foreign labor. These workers come mostly from Bangladesh, India, China, and the Philippines, but you'll rarely see them in the tourist zones. They live on the margins, physically and socially. Take a moment to imagine this. Working 12-hour shifts in Singapore's brutal humidity 6 or 7 days a week for the equivalent of just a few hundred US a month. Now imagine going back not to an apartment, but to a dormitory with 20 other men in bunk beds, little privacy, and even less say in your working conditions. During the COVID-19 pandemic, these dorms became the epicenter of infections. While the rest of Singapore slowly reopened, tens of thousands of workers remained confined to their rooms for months. Many weren't allowed to leave, not even for fresh air. The pandemic didn't create the inequality, it just exposed it. These workers are the invisible gears in Singapore's machine, necessary but often forgotten. And while migrant workers face one kind of pressure, Singaporean citizens face another, an intense pressure to succeed. Scene 2, Education System. From the moment a child enters school, the race begins. Education isn't just important in Singapore, it's everything. By the age of 12, students take the PSLE, a national exam that determines their academic path. The results can shape their future. What secondary school they get into, what subjects they can study, and even their career options years later. From the moment a child enters school, the race begins. Education isn't just important in Singapore, it's everything. By the age of 12, students take the PSLE, a national exam that determines their academic path. The results can shape their future. What secondary school they get into, what subjects they can study, and even their career options years later. Parents feel the weight of this system just as much as their children. Private tuition is a booming industry, with families spending thousands of dollars a year on extra classes. Weekends aren't for play, they're for preparing for the next test. The cost? Childhood becomes a battleground. And for students who don't fit the mold, those who struggle with traditional academics or need more emotional support, there's little room to breathe. Singapore has one of the highest rates of youth stress and anxiety in Asia. It's a silent epidemic hidden behind perfect grades and polished resumes. Let's now take a look at work culture. Singapore's global success is often attributed to its economic openness and innovation. Singapore's global success is often attributed to its economic openness and innovation. But behind the headlines is a workforce that's constantly grinding. A study from the health tech company Cigna found that over 90% of Singaporeans report feeling stressed, with more than a quarter describing it as unmanageable. And yet, no one really talks about it. The culture places high value on resilience, results, and rising through the ranks. To fall behind is to fail, not just professionally, but socially. This always-on mindset leads to burnout. It's not uncommon to hear of people sleeping at the office, skipping vacations, or working through illness, taking a mental health day. That's still seen as weakness by many employers. Singapore is efficient, but often at the expense of emotional well-being. You might succeed here, yes, but at what cost to your mind and body? Now let's talk about a more invisible boundary: freedom of expression. Singapore's government is known for being highly efficient and highly controlling. Singapore's government is known for being highly efficient and highly controlling. Scene 2, soft authoritarian state. While it's not a dictatorship, it operates more like a soft authoritarian state. Elections happen, but the same party, the People's Action Party, has ruled since 1959. Media is tightly regulated, with most major outlets under government-linked companies. There's freedom of speech, but only within limits. Criticism of the government can lead to lawsuits. Public protests? Legal only in designated spaces like Speaker's Corner, and even then you need permission. Online platforms face scrutiny under laws like PAFMA, which allows the state to label posts as false or misleading even when the facts are disputed. This creates a chilling effect. Most citizens simply avoid political discussions altogether, especially in public. Self-censorship becomes second nature. Singapore is quiet, not because there's nothing to say, but because many are afraid of what might happen if they say it. And then there's the question of identity. Singapore markets itself as a modern multicultural society. Singapore markets itself as a modern multicultural society, and to be fair, it is. Chinese, Malay, Indian, and Eurasian communities live side by side, but that doesn't mean everything is equal. The Chinese majority holds the most economic and political power. Government policies have historically favored Mandarin speakers. Even housing policies, which aim to promote racial harmony by mixing ethnic groups in public housing, can unintentionally reinforce stereotypes and tension. And when it comes to LGBTQ+ rights, progress has been slow. The 2022 repeal of Section 377A, which criminalized gay relationships between men, was a historic moment, but marriage equality remains off the table. Pride events are tightly regulated, and public displays of same-sex affection are still rare, not by law, but by unspoken rule. In Singapore, it's not always the law that restricts you, sometimes it's the culture of silence. So where does that leave us? Singapore is a country of paradoxes. It's safe, but restricted. Efficient, but rigid. Modern, but measured. It offers prosperity to many, but not to all. It teaches us something crucial, that every success story has a shadow, that what we praise in public often hides what we ignore in private, and that the most admired societies may carry burdens their people aren't allowed to speak of. If you made it this far, thank you. These are the stories that deserve to be told, not because they're comfortable, but because they're real. If this made you think differently about Singapore or about the way perfection is sold, hit that like button. And if you want to explore more truths the world tries to hide, subscribe. Because on Curious Earth, curiosity is our compass, and we're just getting started.